Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing my most anticipated fantasy romance releases of 2024. Alright guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing all of the fantasy romance books that are releasing in 2024 that I cannot wait to read. So specifically Crescent City 3, but there are a bunch of other romantasy books that are coming out that look amazing. So this is actually a collab video with Becky from the channel Bex Reads, and then also April from Happily Ever April. I love both of their channels, so definitely give them a follow and check out their videos. Once you're finished watching this one, I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot of different fantasy romance titles, so you'll get a great list if you watch all 3 videos. But anyway, I'm so excited to talk about these books with you guys. So if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these fantasy romance books. Alright guys, so I'm going to be sorting these books by release date. So first up in January, we have 2 books. The first one is releasing on January 9th. And that is A Fragile Enchantment. So this is a YA fantasy romance. We are following this girl who is trying to provide for her family. She has the magical ability to weave memories and emotions into fabric. However, this power is slowly killing her. So she is trying to make enough money to support her family while she's still alive, and she ends up being commissioned by this, I believe it's a prince or some sort of noble, to help with a wedding. And when she gets there, there's some sort of scandal that comes up between her and the groom, and the story goes from there. So I've seen that it has chronic illness representation. I'm not exactly sure what kind. And also that a lot of people have compared it to Bridgerton, maybe with like the town scandal and like that whole concept. But it sounds really good, and I am very excited to pick it up when it releases. And of course, the book I am most looking forward to releasing in 2024 is Crescent City 3, House of Flame and Shadow. So I have to be honest, House of Sky and Breath is probably my least favorite book I've ever read by SJM. I was not a huge fan. Loved the ending, but that was pretty much it. However, the first book, Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, I feel like that last half of that book is some of the best writing and the most emotionally impactful I've ever read from SJM. Like, it was just, I have sobbed every time I have read that book, and it doesn't get any easier. It is just so, so good. However, the second book it was a lot of information. It kind of suffered from second book syndrome. But anyway, I am about to do a reread, probably right after I am done winter break, and then hopefully we'll be posting a recap video if you would like a recap of House of Sky and Breath before House of Flame and Shadow releases. Now, I also am thinking about doing a reading vlog for House of Flame and Shadow. Let me know down in the comments if that's something you guys would like to see. I've kind of been steering away from vlogs just because they don't really do well, but I really wish I had vlogged House of Sky and Breath, especially for the ending. So I'm thinking about vlogging House of Flame and Shadow. So let me know if that's something you guys want to see. And moving into February, first up, we have Infinity Alchemist, which was releasing on February 6th. So this is a YA fantasy romance. However, I also think it's kind of like dark academia. We are following our main character, Ash, who lives in a world where only certain people are allowed to study and learn magic. So Ash ends up going to this college, I believe it's called Lancaster, and ends up being turned away and is told that he is not allowed to practice magic. So he ends up becoming a groundkeeper and kind of learns how to practice magic in secret. That is until he is discovered by another character named Ramsey, who's actually a student at this school. And Ramsey has a proposition for Ash and says, hey, I will help you learn how to wield magic, but if I help you, you have to help me track down this super powerful book, and the story goes from there. So it sounds really good. It's already getting really good reviews, so I am so excited to pick this up. And releasing on February 13th is An Education in Malice, which I cannot wait to read. So this is by the same author that wrote A Dowry of Blood, which I have not read yet. However, all of my friends have read it, and they seem to really, really love it. So I have a feeling this book is going to be amazing. It is a sapphic vampire, dark academia, fantasy romance. All of those things sound amazing. We are following this girl that ends up going to this like isolated ancient college, and when she gets there, she's immediately thrust into this rivalry with this other very like popular girl. But this popular girl is already seems to be being stalked by like a very intense poetry teacher. And while all this is going on, there's like ancient and occult magic afoot. And it also says it's gothic and horror. So I cannot wait. This book's gonna be amazing. So I will definitely be reading this in February when it releases. And releasing on February 20th, we have A Tempest of Tea. And honestly, the only reason this book is on this list is because I saw this cover and I was intrigued. I love whatever art style this cover is. I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. But right away, I saw in bold that if you are a fan of Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows, you will enjoy this book, and that is one of my favorite heist duologies of all time. And this is also the first in a heist duology, except this is actually a heist against vampires, which, sign me up. That just sounds so, so cool. So we're following this orphan girl who ends up having to team up with this like group of misfits, and they try to pull off this heist against these like rich elite vampires. And I'm so excited. So like I said, this is releasing on February 20th, and I can already tell this is gonna be like a 5-star read. And the next 3 books are all releasing on February 27th. So first up we have Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. Now this is the same author that wrote the Bridge Kingdom duology, and that was one of the first fantasy romances I read when I was starting booktube, and I love that duology so, so much. So I'm very excited to read this book. Now I haven't read her other books that are set in the same world as the Bridge Kingdom. I think this book is actually set in more of like a Norse type world. So we're following this girl that is in a loveless marriage. She absolutely hates her husband. She wants to learn how to like train and fight, and she ends up getting that opportunity when her husband makes some sort of deal where she has to fight to the death against this like Norse prince warrior. And she ends up during this fight revealing that she actually has a drop of this like shield type power, that it is said in like her people's history that whoever possesses this power, whoever controls her will be able to control like the nation or something like that. Anyway, it's a romance between that warrior that she was trying to fight to the death and then herself, and it sounds really good. It also kind of gave me like Magic the Gathering vibes. I used to play TCGs, and as soon as I heard like shield power, I automatically was like thinking back to those type games. Anyway, I'm very excited to read this, and I'm sure it is going to be amazing. And next up is Where the Dark Stands Still, and this is another cover that I think is absolutely stunning. So if any of you have read the graphic novel Monstrous, it has a very similar art style, and I just think it's very, very beautiful. But anyway, the story is following this young girl named Liska, and she lives in this small town, and everyone knows that magic is monstrous. So our main character does possess some sort of magic, and she ends up having to use it with devastating consequences. Now, when she uses it, it kind of alerts this like demon warden of the woods who shows up and tells Liska that he will grant her one wish if she will spend a year living with him. And the story goes from there. So I heard this is very heavy with like Polish folklore. And then also when I was reading the synopsis, it kind of was reminiscent of like Beauty and the Beast. So I don't know, it sounds really good. And like I said, I love the art style. So I'm very excited to pick this up. And last up for February, we have Compass and Blade, which is a YA fantasy romance story. And this one I'll probably put off until the summer just because it seems very atmospheric. It takes place on this like deserted island. And I don't know, the whole cover and everything just reminds me of the ocean. But the story is following this girl whose family are wreckers, where they end up luring these ships to be wrecked. And then this town or this island lives on the spoils of that wreckage. But our main character is a little different from the other characters and likes to try to save the people that are involved in these wrecks. And I believe she can't feel cold or like somehow feels very at home in the ocean. But anyway, it sounds really good and I'm very excited to pick it up. But like I said, I will probably hold off until the summer. And moving into April, so releasing on April 9th, is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. So this is an adult historical fantasy romance, and so far it sounds really good. So I actually really enjoyed Ninth House and Hellbent. However, I didn't love Shadow and Bone, but I did love Six of Crows. So Leigh Bardugo, very hit or miss. I will say I am very intrigued by the plot of this. So this is set in the Spanish Golden Age, and we're following this girl who I believe is like a peasant or she's lower class, and she is able to perform these little miracles. So when the person who is employing her finds out, she ends up kind of using her for her own gain, but like nothing big, just like gaining some money and like parlor tricks and things like that. However, then the ex-secretary of the Spanish king ends up finding out about this girl and wants to use her to gain the king's favor. And the story kind of goes from there. And once again, I absolutely love the cover, and I feel like Leigh Bardugo writes gothic and creepy really, really well. So I feel like this will be pretty good. But I'm very much looking forward to reading this in 2024. And the next two books, I can't really go in depth onto what they're about because they are both sequels. And they are both releasing on the same day. So we have the Hemlock Queen and then a Pardon of Peridot. I hope I said that title right. I really don't know how to pronounce it. But the Hemlock Queen is the sequel to the Foxglove King, which is an adult fantasy romance. I've heard kind of mixed reviews. My friend Issa read it. A few of my other friends have read it. And it just doesn't really seem like a standout. However, I do want to get to it. Probably not until the fall because it kind of seemed very like fall themed. But then also a Promise of Peridot I will be reading as soon as that releases because that is the sequel to A Dawn of Onyx, which is a fantasy romance that I absolutely adored. Very similar to ACOTAR and kind of predictable, but also I had a really, really fun time with it and I'm very excited to see what happens next. So I will definitely be reading A Promise of Peridot as soon as that releases, and hopefully I'll be getting to the Hemlock Queen in the future. And last up for April, we have A Letter to the Luminous Deep, and this is releasing on April 27th. And the first thing I noticed when I was looking at the blurb of this book is it said if you are a fan of TJ Klune, then you will love this. And personally, I love TJ Klune's romances. House in the Cerulean Sea and then Wolf Song are like two of my absolute favorites. His romances just hit different. They are just so emotionally impactful. And I love them. So if this is anything like that, I know it's a different author, but because they're comparing it, I hope it is similar. But anyway, this is following, well, first we're following these two people that are kind of like social outcasts that develop this like pen pal relationship. And they're very interested, I believe, in like the underwater. And I don't know why I said it like that. They're very interested in the ocean. But anyway, something happens and they both disappear. And then their siblings, I believe like the brother of one and the sister of the other, decide to get together and try to solve the mystery of what happened to them. And I believe a romance forms, and this is described as being very cozy. And I cannot wait. This sounds so good, but also seems like a book that I might end up pushing off until the summer just because based on the cover, it gives those like ocean vibes. But anyway, I'm very excited to read it. And next up is Bloodguard by Cecy Robson. So I actually saw two different release dates for this book. So the first one is March 5th, but we're gonna go with June 25th because I saw that on like 3 different websites and I only saw March 5th on Goodreads. But who knows? Either way, the book sounds pretty good. We are following this guy that ends up moving to a new territory with his dying sister in the hopes of becoming a gladiator and providing for her. Now, he thinks he has nothing left to lose in life because all he's trying to do is take care of his dying sister. Turns out that's not the case. He actually loses his health, his freedom, and pretty much everything he holds dear. Now, he ends up meeting this royal, I believe she's like elven, who offers him a deal that he will get his freedom if he ends up helping her and becomes her personal guard. And the story goes from there. So it sounds interesting. I haven't read a book with a male POV in quite a while, and I didn't realize that until I was reading the synopsis. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of refreshing. I also don't know how I feel about it. But anyway, I'm very interested to see how this is. Also, I feel like I've seen this cover before because when I first saw this, I don't know why I swore this was a sequel, but then it said it was the first in a series. So I don't know if this book has just been being talked about for a while or if it has a similar cover to another book that I've seen recently. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys know what I'm talking about because I swore this book already came out. But anyway, I will definitely be reading this when it releases. And moving into July, on July 9th, we have The Spell Shop, and I know absolutely nothing about this book besides the fact that it is a cottagecore cozy adult fantasy, and the artwork is absolutely stunning. So I read the blurb. I still don't really have any idea what this book is about, besides the fact that it's following this woman that is in the high-risk business of selling spells and also the intense and emotional turmoil of having to start over in life. That is really all I got from it. But if you are a fan of cozy cottagecore, it seems like this book would be perfect for you. I'm not the hugest fan of cozy fantasy. I like a little bit more higher stakes, but I do have some friends. I know Hannah Blackwell from the channel. Hannah Blackwell loves cozy cottagecore, so maybe check out her channel if you are a fan of like that type of fantasy. But overall, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this, but I know there are people out there that will absolutely adore it. And also releasing on July 9th, we have Beneath the Cursed Stars, and this is by Lexi Ryan. So I've read other YA fantasy romances by this author. These Hollow Vows and These Twisted Bonds is one of my favorite YA fantasy romance duologies. It is a little bit similar to ACOTAR, but also geared more towards like the YA reader. And I really enjoyed it. I actually wish it was a series instead of a duology because I feel like that last book had so much going on that she could have spread it out into a series and it probably would have been a little bit better pacing-wise, but overall, I still really liked it. So I'm very excited to read Beneath the Cursed Stars. I believe this is following a girl, it's following two different women. One is able to have this ring that is enchanted, I believe, with like Death's Kiss, and she just goes out and like kills all these people that are her enemies, so power to her. And the other one is maybe a fae that is able to transform into other people, and they team up with these two guys, and I believe there's a romance, and there's also this fatal prophecy, and there's murder, and it just sounds really good, so I'm very excited. I will definitely be reading this as soon as it releases. And I have 2 books for August, however, they are also both sequels in an already established fantasy romance series. So releasing on August 20th, we have Wisteria, which is the 3rd book that starts with Belladonna by Adeline Grace. The first book, Belladonna, I adored, 5-star read. It is super gothic and creepy, but also has that romance. The second book, I was not as much a fan of, Foxglove. It was still good. It just introduces some new POVs that I did not care nearly as much about as I did the characters in Belladonna. The characters are still there in Foxglove. It just had an overall different feeling. However, I will be reading Wisteria when it releases just because, I don't know, I want to know what happens. I believe this is the final book in that series, and I've already come this far, so hopefully the 3rd book just like knocks it out of the park. And releasing on August 27th is Goldfinch, which I believe is book 6 in the Plated Prisoner series. Now, I think this is the last book, but I haven't read book 5, so it's very possible there's going to be more after that. I know the ending of book 4 of the Plated Prisoner series ended in such a way that I can't see. I was very happy when I found out Raven Kennedy was going to make the series a little bit longer because I wasn't sure how she was going to sum up everything in just one more book. Now, I am waiting until the audio is released for book 5, so I have a feeling probably won't be reading Goldfinch when it releases because it seems to take a few months after the book releases for the audiobook to come out, but that's totally okay. I can wait. But anyway, I love the Plated Prisoner series so much, so if you have not picked it up yet, definitely check it out. And releasing on September 10th is Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune. This is the sequel to House in the Cerulean Sea, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Please, if you have not read House in the Cerulean Sea, please read it. It is such a beautiful and heartwarming story. I work in education, and I feel like anyone who works with kiddos or is working in like the social work industry or anything like that needs to read this book. My cousin is a social worker, and as soon as I finished this book, I immediately was like, Hale, you have to read this book. It is so good, and I love it. I love it so much. So please read it. But anyway, I didn't know there was going to be a sequel, and now there is. It was just announced, so I will 100% be picking this up in September, and if it is anything like the first book, I know it is going to be a 5-star. And this last book does not have a date, and honestly, I hope it isn't released in 2024, and that is Fourth Wing 3. So it has been speculated that Fourth Wing, the 3rd book, is going to release sometime in 2024. I'm hoping it's way later, like the end of 2024. Personally, I prefer if it releases earlier in 2025, just because a few people have stated that the author hasn't started working on the book yet, and I'd rather she take her time. I loved Fourth Wing. I also really enjoyed Iron Flame, so I am sure I'm going to love this 3rd book. I just don't want the author to rush. Take her time, let her do her thing so we get a magical story. But anyway, there's a possibility of it releasing at the end of 2024. But like I said, crossing my fingers for early 2025. All right, guys, those are all the fantasy romance books I cannot wait to read in 2024. And like I said before, this is a collab with April from Happily Ever April and Becky from Bex Reads. I will have both their channels linked down below, so definitely check out their videos now that you've finished this one. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!